Hey everyone, welcome to the Identity Love Podcast, episode 30. I'm Tracy Konane, and I am a life coach for folks who have lost themselves in their relationships and don't know how to love and be themselves. And so I not only help you understand what it is to be yourself, but how to actually be yourself in a way that makes you feel self-love. There is a way to do this. So if you feel like you have lost yourself in your relationship, you are probably feeling like you don't know how to be yourself. You don't know where your partner ends and you begin. You don't know what you would be doing or feeling or what your life would even be like without them in it. If you were just left to your own devices, you wouldn't know how to make yourself happy. You wouldn't know what would feel fulfilling in life. You wouldn't know how to function properly because you're not sure how your partner's feeling about you. And I want to say that I have started exactly where you are. I had been in consecutive long-term relationships in which each and every time, even though I vowed not to do this, I would get sucked into the relationship and revolve around my boyfriend every single time. When there was a breakup or we had a fight, I would feel sad, of course, because we were fighting. But even more than that, I felt empty and desperate and horrified because I felt like if they left me, if they were not happy with me, if we were to break up, I would be nothing. I would feel like nothing. I would have no pleasure in life. There would be nothing to look forward to. My whole future would be gone. My whole concept of everything I liked about myself would be gone. Everything that I was enjoying in life came from the relationship I had with my partner. They gave me a purpose to wake up for. They gave me something to look forward to after work. They gave me something to plan ahead for in the weekends. They gave me a vision of the future, and this was my whole life. And so you can probably relate to this feeling where everything is just on your partner. And I want to say that there is nothing wrong with using your partner to look forward to or to see this vision of the future. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. The problem is, how extreme is it? Are we entirely basing our futures and our interests and excitements upon what is going on with our relationship? Because that's when we lose ourselves. The reason why we feel like we don't know who we are now is because for all this time, we have been conditioning ourselves to live in our partner's world, right? We are living in their future, in their ambitions, in their desires, in their preferences, in their wants and needs of us as a partner. And we have become highly attuned to them. We are so focused on their moods, what they're thinking and feeling about us, what they want, how we are being for them. And what happens is that because we are so much in their world, our self-concept of ourselves shrinks to the size of their world. Because I want you to remember that there was a time before this relationship where you woke up in the morning and did not even know that your partner existed. You woke up in the morning, you went through your life, you ate lunch, you went to work or school or whatever it is that you were doing, and you were surviving just fine. You weren't worrying about this person because you didn't know about this person yet. There was a whole life before you met your partner. And the reason why I want to remind you of this is because when we're lost in our relationships, we can feel like this is the only way it is. That we can't even imagine going through our lives without being preoccupied about this person. But that's why I'm here to remind you that you got through how many years of your life before you met this person? How many years? Where you still had joys, you still had interests, you still had hobbies, you had things that you were pursuing and you were excited about and interested about for the future. You had friends, you had things going on. This was all going on way before you met this person, and you were fine. You were moving through life. You were okay. And so I know it feels like right now that this person is your whole life and that you can't imagine what it would be like. You can't imagine functioning without them. Okay? But imagine if we had just gone back in time and we did some kind of eternal sunshine of the spotless mind thing where we erased everything about them in your mind and you were just put back to that former state. There would be no problem. You'd wake up in the morning and everything would just be like, oh, here's my life. All right. Your mind and your concept of yourself have narrowed down throughout the years of being with your partner. And we have forgotten that there is a whole person inside of ourselves, that there always has been a whole person inside of ourselves. And that it's just that through this time, when you've been in the relationship, you have forgotten that there's a separate person there. You have forgotten that there was ever a life before all the stuff going on with this one person that you've been with. And so when I realized that my own concept of myself, my own identity, had shrunk down to this tunnel vision that consisted of my relationship and everything going on in my relationship, I realized, okay, maybe this is something that I can work on. Maybe I can expand myself again. Maybe I can remember myself. I can find out who it is that I actually am. And I looked at people who were in relationships, who were going through life as themselves and not always relying on their partners and not always catering and not feeling stuck in this partner-sized bubble. I realized that there are people who were significant others who were going through life feeling free to just think about themselves throughout the day in a very non-selfish way. They weren't hurting anybody, doing things for themselves, enjoying their day, not worrying about their partners because they have their own whole life going on. And then at the end of the day, they come home and they're with their partner and they combine again. So they know how to combine and separate these two worlds. They're not always just going through life thinking about who they should be or what they should be doing or what their partner's thinking and feeling. There are people out there who are living good relationships who are separate from their partners, separate as their own identities. When they think about themselves and the future, they have something of their own to think about in the future. They have something that they're looking forward to in the weekend that is for them. They have little pleasures throughout the day in their self-care, in the way that they live their lives, that are just for them, that has nothing for anybody else. They're just doing it for themselves, for their own benefit, because it helps them thrive as a human being. And when we are lost in a relationship, it is so easy to forget this. It's so easy to just be focused on our own little relationship bubble. It feels so real. It feels so imminent. It feels so pressing. It feels like that this is it, that this is what the world is. The world is our partner. And if they are gone or if they feel a certain way towards us, everything is ruined. We don't even know what it would be like beyond that. But you do know what it is like. It's just that you've forgotten. And that might have been a long time ago. That might have been a version of yourself that you don't relate to anymore, and things have changed, and there's nothing wrong with that. We are meant to change. And if you have lost yourself in this relationship, there is a version of yourself in the near future that has found themselves, that has found their own identity in this relationship, and who is doing things on their own and being their own self and feeling more whole as themselves. There is a way to learn how to thrive in your current state of life. You don't have to revert back to who you were before you were in the relationship. There is a way to take who you are now and remember that you are an individual, that you are meant to be your own person, that there is a whole human inside of you that has nothing to do with your partner. And that is good. And that is healthy. So how do you find this human? How do you start to think about a future that, yes, has your partner, hopefully, but also has this whole thing that is for you. How do you start to go through your life where you are you aware? Instead of being so partner aware, you are aware of you. And what I'm going to tell you here is something that you might laugh off or think that that can't be it. Or you're going to just say, that just sounds like it's not going to actually do anything serious here. And I want you to be aware that you're going to think this, but I want you to take it seriously anyway. So the thing that I'm suggesting here, and this is the thing that I did, is that you start to daydream again. You start to imagine again. Just like how you were when you were a teenager, when you would sit in the boring class and just imagine a future self, a future version of yourself that is cool and doing different things and not sitting in this boring classroom. You would have these flights of fancy where you're imagining a different life of who you really want to be. We have to start doing this again. And it doesn't have to be in this childish teenage fantasy way, but we have to just start daydreaming and thinking about the person that we would want to be, of the person that we would love to be in the future, of a version of ourselves that we feel delighted to be. And how you start to do this is practice. You practice imagining who you want to be. Going through life, going to your job, doing the family stuff, whatever it is that you're doing, who do you want to experience yourself being in this life? Do you want to be somebody who is reaching out into the world and exploring more things and being more social? Or do you want to stop doing so much of that and allow yourself to work on your own private things at home and to do things that you've always wanted to do, but you've been so busy with other people that you didn't get a chance to do it? Or maybe you want to travel more, or maybe you want to go and do something different with your looks or your style, or to change the way that you are spending time with certain people. There's so many different options of what you want to experience yourself as in the world. And in the beginning, if you feel like you don't know how to start daydreaming, if you feel like you're just too stressed out and blocked up from thinking about your partner, I want you to know that that's okay. The biggest part here is just for you to start to remember that there is someone in you who is worth thinking about, who is worth daydreaming about, and to set aside time, maybe just 5 minutes before you go to bed, to just think about yourself in a future way that is just of you. And it's not about getting this perfect. It's not about having a clear, crystal clear image, but it's to practice thinking about yourself again. It's about practicing noticing what it is that you think is fun and interesting for yourself. And one thing I want to say is that when you start to imagine and daydream again of things that sound cool and fun for you and fulfilling for you, you might start to think, okay, how realistic is this? How would this actually happen? Would I actually be able to pull this off? Would I actually be able to live this life? And we're going to start to rationalize it in our heads. We're going to start trying to be super serious about this as if we're actually going to have to do these things that we're imagining. And this is normal because as adults, we've been taught to stop daydreaming and to get serious, to be realistic. And this is what has happened in our relationship is we've gotten so serious about our relationship. We've stopped dreaming for ourselves. We only know how to dream for our partners, for our relationships. So it's a separate skill to practice daydreaming and thinking about your own whims and your own flights of fancy without immediately knocking them down and saying, that's not realistic, that's stupid, that is so silly. You are supposed to feel like you are daydreaming and fantasizing. It is supposed to feel like, it's like, it's supposed to feel fun and kind of loose and kind of just on a whimsy. And we are probably not attuned to that. We're so used to judging ourselves and measuring ourselves and thinking about how much we need to change and what people are thinking about ourselves. We're so serious and restrictive and judgmental of ourselves. And so this is why what we need to practice doing is to remember how to have fun. If just in our minds, we need to start to loosen up and daydream. So again, if you're thinking, what is this going to get me? Is this actually going to work? I want to remind you that everything that you've been trying to do up until now to please your partner, to try to do the self-love in this serious way, it hasn't been working, right? We need to start to do things differently. And it starts within our own way of seeing ourselves, of how we allow ourselves to be. We need to relax into ourselves again, to stop being so analytical, to stop judging ourselves, because that's what we've been doing. We've been losing ourselves in this world of our partners and trying to keep up with what we think we need to be. And so in order to start to pull back from that, we have to start letting ourselves relax and dream again without judgment. And just notice what it is that you are drawn to. Just notice what you feel like your soul is saying, oh, I wish I could do this. Or I would love to do this one thing. I would love to move to this one area. I would love to get into and learn this one thing, or pursue this one thing, or do this one thing, or do less of these things. What is your soul saying? And then don't think about how this could be possible. Don't think about how probable and how responsible and respectable it is. I just want you to let yourself be naughty and be silly and just be like, oh, interesting. I am into that. I haven't thought about that for years. Or that sounds fun. That sounds so silly, but that does sound fun. Let yourself relax into yourself. Okay. So when I was lost in my own relationships, I could only imagine a future where I was happy because he was happy. I could only imagine a future where I was happy because he was there with me, that we were there together, that we were doing this life together, that I had somehow made him fall so much in love with me and give me all the approval that we are this happy couple. And that was my whole life. My whole picture of the future was us being together and having this love together. And so I had no individual future for myself. If my boyfriend was out of the picture, I would feel like there was nothing left to aim for. There would be no future. Everything just slipped out from the bottom of my feet. And I'd just be like, well, my life is just this gray thing where I just make money and go to work and pay the bills. And then there's no fun. There's no identity. There's no me. And so when I started to daydream again, I tapped into all these things that I didn't even realize I had a yearning for. For example, I realized I wanted to do something spiritual. And every time, this was back in another relationship, every time I thought about the spiritual things I could do, such as go to this esoteric church or get into this one group of people, every time I thought about that, I immediately thought, your boyfriend's going to think that you're being stupid, or your boyfriend's going to judge you for getting into religion. He's going to think you're becoming religious. And so I wouldn't let myself have or notice that thought until I practiced just saying, you know what? I'm just daydreaming. Let me just daydream. And so I would daydream and imagine this life where I am doing things where it is spiritually fulfilling, where I am working on myself one-on-one with somebody else who is helping me to be more of who I wanted to be. I saw myself doing things out in the sun more, doing things during the daylight more, getting out and having hobbies and interests that made me feel good about myself. And yes, every time I started thinking, well, how can I actually fit this into my lifestyle? I don't know how this is going to work. I stopped it and said, hey, this is just me noticing what I'm drawn to. This is just making note of it. And it really was a practice to see that there was a world inside of myself in which I could just imagine what I wanted to do, what I wanted for myself. And it is the imagination piece where the more that I worked on expanding my own imagination of myself in the way where I could imagine myself, only myself, going through life in a different way as myself that had nothing to do with my partner and pleasing him. And this was a skill that I needed to get back to remember that there was a different version of myself before that never knew of my partner. And I had to believe that there was something more there, that beyond the relationship, there is someone in there, someone inside me who has these thoughts and feelings and desires. I had to start to get to know myself again, to have fun with myself, to stop just seeing myself as this thing that is supposed to measure up and be good for other people, and to just see who did I want to be? And so if you are deep in this situation where you feel like you are just in your partner's world and it's just like their family and their friends and their things that are going on and their ambitions and what's going on in their stresses and their lives, you can still be aware of that world, but still pull back and live your own life and realize your own life that you can do in conjunction with being aware of your partner's life. I want you to know that there is another way to do this. There is another way to be in a relationship. And it is completely fine and it is healthy to pull back and find yourself and to explore yourself and to take some time for yourself and to be patient with yourself and not take things so seriously for yourself. And that once you start to do that, you're going to remember that you are your own person, that there is somebody there. So I want to remind you that there is a whole world out there. There's a whole world beyond this relationship. That everything that's going on right now, it might feel so intense and so pressing and so vital to who you are, but there is so much more to you than this. There is so much more to you than being somebody's significant other, than being in their world, than taking care of their world and being good for their world. There's so much more to life. There's so much more to being human, and there is so much more to you. It is okay that you have found yourself in this situation. It's okay that you have lost yourself in your relationship. Nothing has gone wrong. You've gotten yourself so deep into their world. You just need to start finding your way out again. And that requires you to start to think for yourself again. I remember thinking, oh, I'm such a rebel. I'm a free thinker. I'm open-minded, which I was. And you are too. But when it comes to us having our own identities, we are very closed-minded. We are very narrow-minded. We are very just stuck in a bubble. We can only see the relationship. And so you can totally be the most coolest, rebel-minded, open-minded person ever and still have lost yourself in this relationship. It's not saying that you're weak or anything like that. It just means that it's a dynamic that has happened over time. Okay? I know that you're into being more for yourself and that you love improving yourself and being more for the world and expanding yourself and exploring and being cool and being a badass. And you have to be able to do that for yourself. That includes your identity as well. When you're open-minded and thinking about all the possibilities and seeing all the good in other people and thinking outside the box about things in life, you have to do the same thing to yourself. Okay? You have to remember that you have to be open-minded towards you and think outside of the relationship box for yourself. This is a practice where we have to open our minds up about our own identities and to see that we have been putting ourselves in this box inadvertently. Even though we're open-minded and we see everything in the world, we are putting ourselves in this box of our relationship. And it is time to see that this is why we are so aggravated and sad and stuck and feeling unfulfilled, is because when you're this free thinking person who has all this imagination and desire for something more, and you put yourself in this relationship box, you are frustrated. This is why I could not love myself, is because I could not love the version of myself who was restricting who she was and living in this box. I was not attracted to that version of myself. That is the only reason why I struggled to love myself, is that I was trying to love this narrow, shrunk version of myself. And that is why you are struggling too. It's not that there's something wrong with you. It's just that when you've been living and shrinking yourself into a box, you cannot love that version of yourself. Okay? And all you have to do is open the box up and let yourself expand outward again. Let yourself expand into who it is that you really are in this time and place in your life. You have to let yourself out. And then once you start to be more of who you are and to have your own identity, you're going to like yourself more. You're going to see, wow, this is somebody who is out doing stuff, who is fulfilling themselves, who has their own identity. That's more attractive than the person who was in the box. And so you are going to start to feel attracted to yourself. And guess what that leads to? Love. How can you love without being attracted to yourself first? How could we love somebody if we're not attracted to who they are? So this is where it starts, is realizing you're not broken. It's not that there's something wrong with you. It's not that you're such a bad person and gross inside that you cannot love yourself. It's just that you've been trying to love yourself while your identity is in this box. If you are an open-minded, intelligent person who has big dreams and imaginations for themselves, you are not going to be able to love yourself when you are shrinking down and living by rules and being closed-minded about yourself. In order to attract yourself, you have to be open-minded towards you, to think outside the box towards yourself, to let yourself be free. That is how you start to attract yourself and to have more self-love. And again, the way that it starts when you are stuck in this is to start to daydream and fantasize again. And let yourself have it. Let yourself have that luxury. Let yourself just go all out and have fun in your brain again about yourself, of what it is to be yourself. This is going to, over time, give you a clearer vision of what excites you, of who you most want to be, of the future that you want for yourself. Once you realize who it is that you most want to be, you're going to realize that you're so much less dependent on having things be a certain way. You're going to be so much less dependent on someone else loving you a certain way, on what other people are thinking. And so all the things that I thought that I needed to fix first in order to love myself, I thought I needed to fix my self-confidence. I thought I needed to fix my personality. I thought I needed to fix my boring life. I thought I needed to fix all these different things about myself. Those things naturally got better or evened out once I started to just think about a vision of the future that included a version of myself that I was excited about. And that is how we make the changes that we need to make in our lives. We're not going to know how to make these changes if we're staying in the box, if we're thinking only about our partners. You are creative. You are open-minded. You can do this. You just have to practice doing it for yourself. Okay. Thank you so much for joining me on this podcast. Have an open-minded, expansive week, and I will talk to you next time. Bye.